Hey Hakan, how are you, friend?
Thanks. Hi, Nir. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we are online colleagues for a while. I've been in touch with you since I think the Money 2020 was pushed to next year. I think it was in September,
Right.
right? You
Yeah.
were supposed to be there, I think, at the summit.
Yeah.
Of course, today we're going to talk about Mastercard advisors and the region, and we have a fintech week which is focused on Israel, the UAE, Bahrain, and other markets. And I know you have a vast network in these regions, but also globally, because I've been seeing your reports. But before we dive into your work, I'd like to know about yourself. So if you can give us a little bit of a background about who you are.
Perfect. Thanks, Nir. And again, thank you for having me here. So my name is Hakan Eroglu. I'm the Global Open Banking Lead in Mastercard Data and Services, looking after our advisory services. I will come to that because you asked. And also value-added services. So every type of application that you can imagine that is built on top of open banking data and open banking connectivity, be it PFM solutions or credit scoring, digital customer onboarding. So these type of solutions where we help the ecosystem, our clients, the banks and fintechs to build services in the open banking space. So my background is coming from strategy consulting, from the consulting business. So I've been working for Accenture before I joined Mastercard. I was looking after our global practice in open banking consulting, helping, and I do the same also today in Mastercard, helping banks on their open banking strategy, also on product design, so all the kind of customer journeys, customer experiences that you can build with open banking enabled solutions. But also governments and regulators. Especially in the time where we had the PSD2 regulation back in the days with UK open banking. Me coming from Europe, so I'm from originally from Germany, living in Switzerland, but working globally. Having some kind of seen the experiences from PSD2 and UK open banking, what went well, what didn't, to help other regulators in the process of framing or building their open banking regulation, open banking framework. So that's more or less my background, but open banking has started in this whole discussion around open payments, which is PSD2 more or less. And I'm coming from a payments background. So I've done payment schemes, payment infrastructure for banks, for schemes, and open banking was an additional evolution on top of open payments, open banking, and open finance, which we are discussing in the market as well, which is really strongly connected with each other, and that shouldn't be seen as separate topics, so that all is interlinked. And now I'm with open banking, and let's see what comes next.
Yeah, definitely. I've been reading your reports, and by the way, very good ones, very important ones for the industry. I know before COVID, I guess you used to travel a lot and meet these regulators, right? Used to fly a lot. By the way, I think you also met with the regulators here in Israel, right?
Yeah, we had some discussions, and I mean, we talked to many regulators, and also I was involved in some discussions in Israel as well. So thankfully, before Corona, I was able to come to Israel as well. Also to Herzliya, so which I really like, which is kind of a Silicon Valley in Israel, right?
Yes.
Because everyone knows Tel Aviv, right, from outside, or Jerusalem, but not about Herzliya. So a very interesting space of innovation and fintechs, where we are also collaborating, of course, with the ecosystem in Israel. And you have mentioned the regulators, right? So I think with open banking in Israel, it's a very interesting development. It's what I understood is that the regulators are also involved in Berlin Group, for example, for the API standards. that's a very very interesting development to see that, you know, there is a collaboration to see, not to reinvent the wheel in some areas, such as in API standards. So you can learn from others, you can collaborate. And from what I've understood is that there are two phases in the regulation. The first one will be on account information and balance information transactions in the first phase, and the second phase on payments as well, like payment initiation. And yeah, so as I said, but I think the fintech community needs to understand exactly what that means. So what type of access they have to the accounts, what services can they build, and they need to be active as well in the market to see what is possible, because it always depends on the way how an open banking ecosystem is built, because open banking as such is not something that solves all the problems. It needs to be done in the right way, be it standards, be it guidelines on customer experience. I mean, we can discuss that. So that's, you know, one of the things that we have seen in other markets where you regulate open banking, or you come up with a payments regulation saying there needs to be interfaces, it needs to be done in an international standard, secure way, and so on and so forth. But if you don't give it slightly more guideline in what direction it should go, it can create fragmentation, a lot of fragmentation. Some fragmentation is okay, because then there you have a market and the industry decides what's the best solution. But then there are some developments like, you know, where you don't have standards on performance of APIs. Some APIs are not fast enough in the response, and it has impact to the business models of fintechs, right, or of banks, for those who are building applications on top of it. But then it doesn't work because customers don't like to use it because it's super slow. The other one is about business models. As I said, the ecosystem, the open banking framework needs to provide some freedom also for the market to create business models. So be it, you know, what can you charge for APIs? What is allowed to build, right? What applications are allowed to build? Because there are different opinions on that. So what should be created? Is it just for financial inclusion, to create use case on credit scoring or so? Or do you want to leave it open to the market to do whatever they want, because the market will decide what the customer wants? And if the customer doesn't want it, then this fintechs will die. Only the fintechs will survive that create things that are meaningful. Yeah. I think these are the things that are being discussed I think in Israel and in other countries as well. What's the right way to do it? But we believe that it should be up to the market, to the fintech, to the community, to the banks. I'm mentioning fintech, and it's a fintech week, but banks can also be fintech in terms of working with fintechs in collaboration and partnership, using open banking mechanisms, right? Being open enough, having developer portals, being collaborative, changing their mindset. It's not only technology, to collaborate with fintechs and build joint offerings. So that's also an angle that we can look at. And I mentioned that with customer experience, I think security is very important to us. The ecosystem needs to be safe and secure for everyone, for banks, for fintechs, for the end consumer especially, right? When it comes to data privacy, fraud, and these things. So strong customer authentication, we have seen in many regulations that you need to do a second factor to make sure that only the customer has access to the data and to the payments. But it also can create a lot of friction in the process, right? So what's the right way to do? What are the exemptions that you can give to the TPPs to make frictionless customer experience? How do you build the APIs that it allows TPPs to create frictionless customer experience, right? And there are different opinions on that, how to build that.
So how do the bank build their open APIs and access?
Well, I mean, at the moment, what we see is, especially in the regulated markets, of course, they are offering the regulated APIs in developer portals. there are different types of engagements and how banks are embracing it. From our side, as in the space that I'm looking after, the advisory space, right? So we help banks to to understand what open banking means to them. In some cases, in some countries, and I'm coming to the Gulf region, for example, to the MEA region, where some banks are really advanced in the thinking. They know what open banking is. They heard about PSD2, and so you're not telling them something new. So you need to come up with, what are the pain points at the moment for banks. I think in the GCC region we have banks need help in shaping an actual business model. So they have a strategy. They know what are the use cases. They understand it, but they understand, okay, I want to have these 3 use cases, but I don't know really how to do it. So who are the right partners to do it? Because in most of the cases, they cannot do it on their own. They need a fintech, or any type of technology partner to do it. Who are the right ones? Please help me to select. But also in some other cases, the fintechs are not operating in their countries. So they want to attract fintechs to come to the country. And that's why Bahrain, for example, came up with the open banking regulation, by the way, in the revised version, which was published recently, with a proper open banking framework that should make it more attractive for fintechs from outside to come to the country in Bahrain to build applications for the region, right? To test use cases, to create new business models, and of course revenues and attractiveness for the country. So that's why regulation is not only about competition, right? To create competition, reduce costs, and so on and so forth, as we have seen in Europe, but it's also a vehicle to force the ecosystem to collaborate, to innovate, and make the region more attractive for investors, for further revenue growth and innovation in the country.
I'm very interested again about your role, because it seems like you're talking to the banks, to the regulators, to the small fintechs, the established fintechs, like you are an advisor. You are in the middle of like a hub, right, for connecting, and I'm seeing all the content that you're putting out there. I mean,
yeah. So this is the role of our company, of Mastercard. We are a network company coming from the cards payment space, but we see our role in a multi-rate way. So we have multiple infrastructures, right? We have the cards, of course, but we have also built a big network in Europe with infrastructure of connectivity for open banking. So where we are building connectivity to bank accounts to all the European banks. We have a mechanism to save the ecosystems, to keep the ecosystem safe and secure with a protection shield. And we have a dispute resolution kind of mechanism to have the ecosystem to manage disputes, right? Not only in the payment space, which is something that isn't kind of where we have experience, but also in the data space, right? What do you do when data has been stolen by someone, or you want to revoke the consent from a fintech to use your data, but they have to delete it, right? But how do you control that? Who's managing disputes when it comes to fraud or inappropriate usage of data? So how do you do it? So we are dealing in that space as well, to be the hub or the orchestrator in a way to help the ecosystem to solve that problem. And of course, you have also heard the acquisition of Finicity in North America, which was approved by the Department of Justice in the US. So where we are also, expanding in other regions as well, like in the US, on connectivity, but also on value added services such as credit scoring, account verification. So all the kind of analytics pieces on top of open banking data. So that's what we do. And in the advisory space, as you said, we are kind of a hub. So of course, we are helping the banks that we are working with in our network to help them to tackle open banking. Open banking is an additional business for us, but also a business that we see for our clients, that this is not a threat, this is an opportunity to be part of it. Open banking is happening anyways, right? We have seen that in Asia, right, where there is no open banking regulation. There are not discussions around APIs as we do right now. They have it already. There are tech companies, tech giants who are tapping and who are serving customers without being a bank, right? They're serving financial services without being a bank. In the US, we see the same development. And that's happening, that's reality, without open banking regulation. So that's why regulation, or let's say open banking, the discussion with banks is helping them, pushing them to think about it, what's happening, and how they can become an important part in that new ecosystem of digital companies, of tech companies, where banking and payments is just one part of the whole thing. But it's not the most important one, but an important one, not the most important one, because customers want to have their everyday life managed, right? They want to book a cab, they want to book a flight, they want to have food, they want to buy tickets, and payments and banking is the glue, is the blood in the whole ecosystem to manage the whole thing. But the banks can become an important part there, right? And we can help them to understand their role and how they can remain relevant in the new data economy and the new platform economy, so to say.
And you see a lot of interest.
Absolutely.
Let's talk for 1 second about the banks in the MENA region and the UAE and Bahrain. You said, what do you feel from we talked about the regulators, now I'm talking about the banks, the innovation, the industry.
Absolutely. So in Bahrain, for example, we have, as I said, the regulation in open banking. Fintechs are at the moment looking for, let's say, a bigger market, right? So they need to scale. And one of the things that you can do as a fintech in that region is, of course, you need to test, first of all, solutions, how that would work in the Arab region, because the Gulf region is different from the rest of the Arab region, right? Because it has its own history, it has a kind of own kind of type of economy, and that's why we need to have a specific answer to that. And as you said, we did a lot of research. Probably for those who are listening at the moment, you can download the report from Mastercard that we published around, I think, 3 weeks ago on open banking in the Gulf region and Egypt. So there you get additional insights around the structure of the market, of the fintech ecosystem, and how open banking can help fintechs, but also the end consumers to benefit from that. And just one point on the nature of the region. I think that's a region where you have a lot of white-collared and blue-collared workers, right? People from outside the country working in the country and being part of the ecosystem. So what use cases can help them to solve their issues? Most of them are, for example, sending money back home, right? Remittance is much more important than in many other regions. So open banking can help also to come up with frictionless and transparent, interesting solutions around remittance, around payments. Financial literacy is important as well. So people have multiple bank accounts, but they don't know what's happening on their bank accounts, right? So they have lots of investment accounts, but they need more advice to invest their money properly. So that's why access to accounts, fintechs who are using AI mechanisms to create kind of robo-advisory applications and so on and so forth to help on financial literacy. Financial inclusion, especially for those who are outside the country, who mostly don't know the language. So how can you help them to understand their financial situation? Plus credit scoring. People coming from outside, they don't get credit and loans because banks don't have their credit history. And open banking can help here to get more insights, more information of the customer and calculate better credit scoring and allow these people also access to credit and loans. I think there are plenty of opportunities for that market that is widely underserved, or I don't say underbanked because they're all banked or overbanked even, but it's financial inclusion, literacy, and access to credit and loan is very important in that market. And you can have a look into the report because we bring a more light into that, and we give a perspective of what are the benefits and merits of open banking in the region.
You gave me a lot of ideas. By the way, I will read the report. It's super important for people in our industry, and I recommend everybody, not just this report, but other reports that you did about open banking. By the way, also open banking in the US and other places. While you were talking, I was like thinking about all the amazing companies that we have in the summit. I'll just name one that we have on the summit here is Rewire from Israel. I don't know if you heard of them. But they are serving the underbanked or actually migrants who are in different countries, let's say also in Europe, and they're sending money back home, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a huge market, not only tapping into sending money back home, but also treating them with other services, with more services of banking. For some people, this is their this is the only dinner that the family eats. For some, it's building a home, and this is the role that you're playing over there in making this possible for so many. This is the big role of Mastercard and all these players.
Yeah, and I think that there is also a shift in the mindset of the banks that is coming more and more, also in the region. That if you want to be part of the game, you can become a bank platform, right? I mean, we have seen that in other countries with other larger incumbent banks with bank platform as a service or open platforms, where fintechs, they need partners, right? Because they cannot do payments, remittances, and these kind of things in a new market without having a licensed bank and a bank that is helping them to process the payments and so on and so forth. Or to have bank accounts in the where you're parking the money and processing the money. You need partners, and for those who are becoming open, who are building modern infrastructure, having developer portals, they are attracting more fintechs and they generate new revenue streams, which they didn't have before. So it's not really about cannibalizing; it's also about to grow their business by allowing new possibilities. And I think if fintechs from Israel are going to Bahrain or so, I think that's is exactly that what these countries aim is, right? Really to attract fintechs with the regulation and to build new services for not only for that market but also for the wider market, right? Because it's as I said, the customer behavior and the needs and the pain points are very close, right? They are very similar to each other. That's why if you win and you are successful in one of these countries, and then you can expand. I think UAE is the market, I would say, in the Gulf region, because in the next step, and then other markets as well in the Gulf region, but UAE is quite big, 9 to 10 million citizens, and that is one where you can scale different type of services and become successful. And don't be afraid of contacting banks. You just need to do it in the right way. And I always say that to fintechs, because everyone has a great use case and they love their application and that what they have achieved. And this is, I think, something you can acknowledge. But it's really about what's in for the banks. Yeah. So even us as Mastercard. So when I go to before Corona, I was in Bahrain and UAE meeting a lot of banks. And they always said, where are the fintechs? What are the key use cases? Bring me the fintechs. What is the value add that they bring? How do I make money? So it's not about only to be seen as an innovative bank because I do stuff with fintechs. I think that's over. They want to have money and business cases, which is of course understandable. And that's why all of us are doing it. But I think that's super important, and people are very smart. They understand what's going on, and so be prepared. So when you go to the region,
I didn't even ask the question, and you're already giving me the added value here. I love it.
Very smart people.
Yes, very smart.
And you are as well, right? So everyone in the region. So, but yeah, so
very smart people. I totally agree. Very highly educated, and I'm actually in talks with some fintechs and connecting them to banks in the UAE, and I'm enjoying just being in the middle and hearing the conversations and the opportunity
absolutely.
here. Yes, we are running out of time, but I could talk with you so much, and we also have amazing partners, by the way. In the region, we have in this summit we have Microsoft for Startups, which are very, very active. You're seeing them a lot with the DIFC FinTech Hive and the DIFC that's in Dubai, and the ADGM, and Richard spoke and will be speaking also in our summit, and they're doing so many activities throughout the year and creating these FinTech bridges. And I think that's exactly what you do. You are a FinTech bridge, at least for me. You are a big, a very important resource, because you have an outside outlook on these industries, and that's why we're doing this summit to educate, and I'm seeing you very much involved with other webinars in the UAE also, right? Just recently I saw you.
Yeah, just last point on this one. So I'm looking specifically more into the EMEA region. So in my role, because of the potential in the region. So I'm Mastercard is just became a member of the MENA FinTech Association, which is the biggest one in the region. And I'm leading the Open Banking Working Group. We have worked together with the Arab Monetary Fund to come up with a unique report where we surveyed 18 Arab central banks on open banking regulation, business models, use cases, to get a very good insights from them. And we worked in the working group with some other companies from the region that are dealing with open banking. From the Gulf region especially, with their thinking from the fintech community, so to say. Also, what is the vision of open banking in the Arab world, right? So what are the use cases? How should we do it? How can we learn from other regions but bring our flavor into it? So that's a great piece of work, which you can also download from the website of the MENA FinTech Association. It's called Open Banking, a Vision from the Arab World. So so just have a look into it. It was really helpful to see what regulators are planning. So in terms of what's coming next, just one interesting insight: just more than 70% of the regulators that we surveyed said that that once they do an open banking regulation, it will be prescriptive, right? So it will be really a clear framework on open banking with standards, framework, and so on and so forth. So for those who want to expand in the region and who want to be successful in the region, you need to understand the dynamics and the development and the thinking of regulators of the market. Regulators are really important in that region. So in terms of when it comes to innovation and openness in banking, then they play an important role. So that's why we brought them into this analysis. And very great insight. Just have a look, and I think that will be very helpful for your fintechs in the region to be successful in the Arab world.
Yes, that was very, very important. One last question, if I can say, it's of course it's COVID, and I'm still, I'm seeing you very, very active, even though again some of the physical events were canceled.
Mm-hmm.
I see you very active. How is it reflecting your personal work with your relations? You used to fly all the time and meet in person.
Yeah, I think that's really different. So there were different phases or acts with this whole tragedy around Corona. It started with my last trip in Bahrain and UAE, where I thought that I will strand here, and which is basically a place to be also, right? And to be in Dubai for a few weeks, why not? But of course, I want to go back home to see my family. So I flew back. I got one of the last flights, and then since then I'm in Zurich, where I live. So that's my home country, or Switzerland. Not traveling was in the first phase really with a lot of question marks, like what's coming next? How is that whole thing working going forward? Because the collaboration is always working with seeing people, being on stage or meeting clients, where being close to people, and the communication is really different to that what you can do in Zoom. Yeah. But then it was a learning curve for everyone, for each of us, because it is possible to do things on Zoom, but it doesn't give you, or any other streaming service, but it is not giving that last mile of kind of personal touch, and that makes it unique. And I'm really missing this. And I think, as every one of us are expecting and hoping for a vaccine, and there are a couple of vaccines that are in the last phase, that see how it goes. And I think that experts say next year, early next year, we will see some relief in this whole thing. And then people are going back to travel. And I don't believe that travel will go back to the 18th or 17th, right, of passengers. So I think that it will come back big time. I can only say that about me and the people I know, but maybe it's just a microcosm. But I believe that people really, really want to go out and want to see family and people, and I think it will come back again, and we will see each other again, hopefully in person, sometime next year. In Tel Aviv, in Dubai, in Bahrain, or in Zurich and London. So looking really forward to see the people again in person.
Amazing. How can people follow you personally, your work, read all the reports?
So absolutely. I mean, you can follow on Mastercard, on the Mastercard site. So we have a stream where we are publishing the content. You can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter, of course, because I publish not only the reports, but also latest news on open banking, on ecosystem, on fintech. So that what I believe is relevant for the market, I share. Or when new regulations are coming up, and I do my analysis on that. I publish on Finextra, but also on Forbes Middle East, which is also where I'm a contributor. So I'm regularly posting and publishing articles on these platforms. So stay tuned, and looking forward to working with all of you together also in the future.
Very helpful. Thank you very much. And hopefully we can also collaborate, because we are working on the FinTech Bank API hackathon next year with bank partners. And I think that can be a great continuation of doing something that is more than a summit. But in this summit, we are focusing not only on the content, but also on the connecting the fintechs to opportunities, just like we did on the FinTech Nations matchathon, that we matched companies based on their needs. So I can't wait to collaborate again, and thank you very, very much for being a part of the FinTech Week this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me, and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.